I brought last night you weren't here. So I just opened my ear hoping that you would see them.
Yeah.
And I wonder where it doesn't have to be right here. Unfortunately. I was going to put them in front of me before, but then it was kind of dark.
No, it's okay.
Okay. And then what types as in like how much?
These types especially. I don't mind the others as well.
Right, and
This is the lettuce.
this is actually bok choy.
Well, okay.
So I don't know if you're interested in each
Yeah,
one.
okay.
There's some lettuce out there.
You get a shock. So this is the pot that we use.
All right.
I think there's room.
I didn't want to stay.
So I'll just keep this in my room. Okay?
What's that? I didn't want to stay.
Sure.
But I just dropped off his clothes. I'm like, oh. You know what I'm
So anything from Champak? From so you didn't even see it? Wait.
Yeah, I saw him.
Okay, so nothing new about Champak? Anything to report? He's happy?
John Black, the person he's working for?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. What do you mean, happy with my man?
Well, no, happy with being there and working there and progress there.
Well, you know, well, you can talk to him about that.
Okay.
He's having a hard time with math.
With math?
With the stairs. 4 hours he sat there. He shouldn't have done that. Trying to figure it out.
I've actually pressed the button on Facebook Live.
Oh, so we're
So
live.
everything in the last 5 minutes has been
Oops.
sent around the world.
Oh, well, I just got here, thank goodness.
Okay. All right, so it's on. Which is on.
Okay.
Because she called me just after I pressed the button. Okay. Today's some nectar from Chaitanya Charitamrita. Jai. Bandeham Shri Guru Shri Judaha Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathan Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadhutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padam Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhan Vitamscha Om Ajnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshur Unmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namah Mukam Karoti Vachalam Pangam Langayate Girim Yat Kripa Tamaham Bande Shri Gurun Dinataranam Vansha Kalpatarubhashta Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Namo Mahabhadanyaya Krishna Prema Pradayate Krishnaya Krishna Chaitanya Namane Gaura Trishe Namaha Nityanandam Namastubhyam Premananda Pradayane Kalau Kalmashanashaya Janava Pataye Namaha Panchatattvatmakam Krishnam Bhaktarupa Swarupakam Bhaktavataram Bhaktakyam Namami Bhakta Shaktikam He Krishna Karuna Sindho Dinabandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vrindai Tulsi Debai Priyai Keshavasyacha Krishna Bhakti Prade Devi Satyavachai Namo Namaha Bhaktya Vihina Aparadha Lakshai Kshiptascha Kamadi Taranga Madhye Kripa Maitvam Sharanam Prapanna Brinde Numaste Charanarvindam Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shrivas Adi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. First of all, I'm offering my unlimited Dandavat Pranams and my Shraddha Pushpanjali at the lotus feet of my most worshipable beloved Gurudev, Nitya Lila Pravishta Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Asto Tarashata Shri Srila A.C. Bhakti Vedanta Swami Maharaj Srila Prabhupada. Then I'm offering my same unlimited Dandavat Pranams and my Shraddha Pushpanjali at the lotus feet of my most worshipable beloved Siksha Gurudevs Nitya Lila Pravishta Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Asto Tarasata Shri Srila Bhakti Rakshak Sridhar Goswami Maharaj and Nitya Lila Pravishta Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Asto Tarashata Shri Srila Bhakti Vedanta Narayan Goswami Maharaj. And I'm offering my Dandavat Pranams to the lotus feet of all of my Shri Shri Rupa Nuga Guru Varga Gaudiya Guru Parampara. And I'm offering my Dandavat Pranams to all of the Vaishnavas and all of the Vaishnavis. We're continuing in our reading of chapter 15 of the Madhya Lila, Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita. We're on text 108, where there's going to be a very powerful purport that we saw it last time. This chapter is titled The Lord Accepts Prasadam at the house of Sarvabhaum Bhattacharya. But there are many different topics in this chapter. Mainly, it is after the Rath Yatra festival and at the end of the entire 4 months of Chaturmasya. Every year, Mahaprabhu's eternal associates would walk from Bengal to Puri in a very beautiful Sankirtan party. I don't know what the actual figure was, but at least I think there was maybe a couple of hundred devotees. Shivananda Sain, he was making the arrangements. Mahaprabhu also told Shivananda Sain that he should always do this and look after. Even he told him to look after was the devotee?
Young Katha, the one who took all the sins on the Vasudeva.
No, Vasudeva Datta. Vasudeva Datta. To look after him because he just was, whatever he made, he just spent, and he's a householder, so he told, Mahaprabhu told Shivananda Sen to take care of his accounts. So, and also, these two very great personalities from which village? I'm forgetting the name. Modern day Navadvip, what it used to be. Kulin and Ram, yes. And Mahaprabhu told that even any dog from that village is very dear to him. So Ramananda, Vasu, and Satyaraj Khan, they were asking Mahaprabhu, especially Satyaraj Khan was speaking the questions, what they should do when they go back and they will not see Mahaprabhu for another 8 months. So how should they live their lives? What should they do? And Mahaprabhu told them, they should serve Krishna, they should do Krishna Seva, they should also do Vaishnava Seva, and they should constantly chant the holy names of the Lord. And then Satyaraj Khan asked, well, how can we recognize the Vaishnava that we should serve? And then Mahaprabhu told, anyone that has chanted the name of Krishna even once, I'll go back to that verse, yes, even once. Here it is. Prabhu kohe jar muke shuni ek bar. If you hear, even once, from someone's mouth, the name of Krishna, one, ek bar, then Krishna Nam, you see here Krishna Nam, se puja. That person is worshipable. And Shrestha Sabakar, he is the best of all the human beings. Yes. So we read some very interesting purports. Then Mahaprabhu continued, he said, Ek Krishna Name Kore Sarva Pap Kshoy. That means simply by chanting the holy name of Krishna once, Ek Bar, Ek Krishna Name, Sarva Pap Kshoy. A person is relieved from all the reactions of a sinful life. Nava Vidha Bhakti Purna Nam Hoite Hoy. Simply, all the Navavidha Bhakti, the 9 rooms of Bhakti, they can be completed. The 9 processes of devotional service simply by chanting the holy name. And then we read that purport. Yes. That all these should be preceded and followed by the chanting of the holy name of the Lord, the Mahamantra. Then he said also, one does not have to undergo initiation. Now, this is the verse we're on now, 108. Diksha Purascharya Vidhi Apeksha Nakore. Jiva Sparshe E Chandala Savare Udhare. Yes, so there's going to be a lot of verses that are going to be quoted here, because this is a serious discussion that what is Diksha? And what does it mean that one that's chanting the holy name does not wait for Diksha? Yes, so the verse is saying one does not have to undergo initiation or execute the activities required before initiation. One simply has to vibrate the holy name with his lips. And jiva means the tongue. Thus, even a man in the very lowest class, a chandala, he can be delivered. So now, Jiva Goswami explains the word diksha in his Bhakti Sandarbha. Divyam Jnanam Tato Dadyat Kuryat Papasya Samshayam Tasmat Diksheti Sa Prokta Deshikais Tattvako Vidai. So here, Jiva Goswami is telling that all those who are very learned, very expert in understanding and studying the revealed scriptures, they know and they recognize this process as Diksha. What is that process? Diksha is the process by which one can awaken his transcendental knowledge. First thing. So the verse is saying, Divyam Jnanam Tato Dadyat. So Srila Gurudev, he also explained this verse. This is a verse that Gurudev has mentioned many times, that if you want to understand what does it mean when you get Diksha, what is the actual definition of the word Diksha? So this verse is quoted from the Bhakti Sandarbha of Jiva Goswami. And he's explaining that the first thing is Divya Jnanam Tato Dadyat. So what does Divya Jnan mean?
Divine knowledge.
Yes. Do we have a song to our Guru that we sing that has those two words in it?
Divya Jnana Hriday Prakashito.
Yes. Yes. There's a Guru Mukha Padmavakya Chitete Koriya Aikya. No, Arana Koriya Mani Ashna. Oh no, that's later on in the song. Yes. It says Prema Bhakti Jaha Hoite Avidya Vinasha Jate Vede Gayara Charita Pasi Chakudam Dilo Ye Janme Janme Prabhu Se Divya Gyan Hriday Prakashito. So this is a song by Narottam Das Thakur. It is the song called Sri Guru Charana Padma. It is the most sung song in the whole world, all over the world, because Srila Prabhupada especially emphasized that song, but in Gaudiya Math also, by Narottam Das Thakur. And that song is the masterpiece song of understanding Guru, his qualities, his nature, one's relationship with Guru. Everything is in that song. How we should approach Guru, how we should feel towards Guru, how we should surrender to Guru, how we should take the words of Guru. So, the word Divya Gyan Hriday Prakashito means that he manifests, Sri Guru manifests divine knowledge, Divya Gyan, in our heart, the disciple's heart. So in this word Diksha, there are two syllables, Di and Ksha. So the first line of this song, of this verse, is telling Divya Jnanam Yato Dadyat. That means when Divya Jnan has been given and received, Tato Dadyat. Divya Jnanam Tato Dadyat. Then the second part of the verse is Ksha. D, Ksha. K-S-H-A. Ksha. So Ksha, it is a word which means that it is vanquished. Ksha. Kshapayati also is one of those root words. So, the second syllable of the word Diksha, Kuryat, Papasya, Samshayam. Samshayam means completely eradicated, completely destroyed. What is that? Kuryat Papasya. So in Sanskrit, the word for sin, do you know the word for sin? Pap. P-A-P-A. So pap means sin, and punya means pious activities. So everybody performs The conditioned souls in this material world, they perform sinful activities and they also perform pious activities. There's a mixture. Sinful activities cause one to become degraded. And one has to become more enveloped in the chain of sinful reactions. So here it's saying that when those chain of sinful reactions are mitigated, that is called diksha. But not only that, on the positive side, when divya jnana is received and all sinful reactions are eradicated, that's called diksha. Tasma diksheti sa prokta. This is therefore referred to as diksha. Now, diksha is the process by which one can awaken his transcendental knowledge and vanquish all reactions caused by sinful activity. So, we our Vedic lifestyle, the lifestyle that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has given, that we are trying to follow in our lives, this involves the process called diksha. And some devotees have taken the initiation, right? Diksha. And some devotees have taken Harinam, but that's not called diksha. The word diksha is not used for Harinam. Sometimes people mistakenly use that. But diksha especially refers to the reception of Gayatri mantras from Shri Guru, and the giving for the male devotees the sacred thread Upanayana. This is a symptom, this is a symbol that one has received initiation from a pure Vaishnava. And that immediately awards that person a technical recognition as being a Brahmana. Although he may not yet have attained all the qualities of a Brahmana, but now he is in the school, the Brahminical school, by which he can become a Brahmana and a Vaishnava. So, if a person says, yes, I already took Diksha. I took Diksha. Oh, what year did you take Diksha? Oh, I took 10 years ago, 20 years ago, 40 years ago, I took Diksha. But, technically, you have not received Diksha yet. Understand this point? I'm explaining it now. Because what is the criterion of Diksha? We just read. 2 things. What are those 2 things?
You attain transcendental knowledge.
Right? That's one of them. Divya Jnana.
All sins
and sins. Now, so, these 2 things, when that is attained, then you have attained Diksha. But prior to that, if you have sat in a ceremony and received mantras from an elevated personality and you are accepting them as your guru, that is the entry. You are being given entry into the school of Diksha, just like a university. In a university, you have to be granted entry. You have to pass a test, then you have to be examined and then accepted.
Initiation means to begin.
Yeah, it means to begin. Begin what? The process of Diksha. So this is going to be talked about. We'll hear about that. A person expert in the study of revealed scriptures knows this process as Diksha. The regulative principles of Diksha, they are explained in the Hari Bhakti Vilas and also in the Bhakti Sandarbha of Jiva Goswami. So here's the verse. Vijanam anupetanam svakarma dhyaya nadishu yatadikaro nastiha syachcho pannayanad anu tatatra dikshitanam tu mantra devarchanadishu nadikaros yata kuryad atmanam shiva samstutam. Quote the translation. Even though born in a Brahmin family, one cannot engage in Vedic rituals without being initiated and having a sacred thread. Although born in a Brahmin family, one becomes a Brahmin only after initiation and the sacred thread ceremony. And unless one is initiated as a Brahmana, one cannot worship the holy name properly. Unless one is initiated as a Brahmana, one cannot worship the holy name properly. Shri Shri Guru Gauranga Gandharvika Giridhari Radha Govinda Ji. According to the Vaishnava regulative principles, one must be initiated as a Brahmana. The Haribhakti Vilas quotes the following instruction from the Vishnu Yamala. Adikshitasya vamoru kritam sarvam nirartakam pashu yonim avapnoti diksha avirahito janaha. Unless one is initiated by a bona fide spiritual master, all his devotional activities are useless. Here it says nir artakam in the first line. Adikshitasya vamoru kritam sarvam nir artakam. So it says that unless one is initiated by a bona fide spiritual master, all his devotional activities are useless. A person who is not properly initiated can descend again into the animal species. Have you heard that before? Did everyone hear this? I'm reading it again. Unless one is initiated by a bona fide spiritual master, all his devotional activities are useless. A person who is not properly initiated can descend again into the animal species. Wait. So, we don't hear this very often. We hear quite the opposite. We hear quite the opposite. Oh, I'm chanting and I've been living as a devotee. And we think that we're safe. I can't descend back down. I can't again become a dog or a crocodile or an elephant or a fly. No, I can't. But do we have examples from Shastra? What is the example?
King Braj.
King? What was he king of?
The whole world.
He was the emperor.
Yes.
What happened? Tell us. Give him the mic.
So he had good instruction from his father, and so when he had
Who was his father?
Rishabdev.
Yes, Lord Rishabdev.
And by his example, he also gave up his kingdom when he came to a certain age. And he headed to the mountains, to the jungle, and there lived a very austere life. But within that life, just by providence, a little baby deer appeared, helpless to him. And dependent upon him saving it. So that he did. And
Something kind of like the cats that appear around here.
Yes.
Okay, yeah, thank you. Go ahead.
And so he nurtured this little baby fawn, but in that nurturing grew quite attached to it.
Oh, what? He's the emperor. He had all the wealth of the world. Beautiful wife, queens. He became attached to a baby deer?
He did.
What? Go ahead.
Because that's the nature of rendering service to intimately to one who appears dependent upon you. So in that attachment, he was thinking of the deer constantly. Even when he would try to meditate, thoughts of the deer would enter his mind.
Was that something that happened from the very start, or did that gradually take place?
It gradually took place over time.
In the beginning, what was he doing?
Oh, he was doing...
All of his spiritual practices and everything?
Yes.
Right? And then what happened? Gradually, what happened?
Gradually, that attachment that he had impacted his mind, the impression so much that even when he attempted his usual spiritual practices, he would be remembering this deer.
And gradually what happened to his spiritual practices?
Well, they slackened because you're not really doing spiritual practices if your mind's diverted to material
They
attachment.
became practically nil, his spiritual practices. Okay, then what happened?
And so at the time of his passing, the mind reflects the life it's known. And so he thought of a deer, and thus took birth.
Which deer?
A deer that was cognizant. So
No, he thought of that very deer.
That deer. But
why? Because remember in the story, that deer grew up. And one day, a whole flock of deers came, deer, singular, plural. They came, and that deer went with them. And in the Bhagavatam, there are verses where he's describing poetically, "Oh, my dear, where have you gone? Did I make some offense against you?" This and that. He became completely obsessed with the deer. And what happened? In that condition of consciousness, he suddenly had an accident and he died. And then he was put into the body of a deer because he was thinking of a deer at the time of leaving the body. And Krishna tells in the Bhagavad Gita a particular, very serious instruction, yam yam vapi smaran bhavam. Whatever one is thinking, yam yam vapi smaran bhavam tyajyati anta kalevaram. When the person is giving up his body, kalevaram means body, tyajyatyante, at the end when he's giving up the body, tam tam evaiti kaunteya sada tadbhava bhavitaha. O Kaunteya, O Arjuna, that very bhav, that very mood and what one is thinking at that end time, when you are leaving the body, he will attain that very state without fail. So we should always be very aware of this, that when the attachment is cultivated for any mundane person, place, thing, anything, you may have to again take birth because of that. Srila Prabhupada had a morning walk conversation once, quite famous, where he's talking about that if you are attached to anything in this material world, you again must take birth. That is the criterion. If you're attached to anything here, you will again have to take birth. And again, taking birth means what? Janma, mrityu, jara, vyadi. Birth, death, disease, old age. And then again, another one. And then another one. Isn't that good? That's why Lord Rishabdev taught his sons, of whom Bharat was one of them. To be very, very careful. Nunam brahmata kurute vikarma yad indriya pritaya apranoti. Tatsa nasadu manye yata atmanoyam asanna pikleshada ashadeha. Those persons who have become mad, pramatta, nunam pramatta kurute vikarma, and they have become attached to vikarma, sinful activities which will cause one to digress. Nunam pramatta kurute vikarma yad indriya pritaya apranoti. They are fully absorbed in indriya priti, giving gratification to the material senses of this body. Indriya pritaya apranoti. They are accepting this as the purpose of life. Prabhupada would quote this quite often because he's facing that general state of mind of the human population. But that's all they know. And they are considering that this is the goal of life. So he says, na sadhu manye. I do not think that this is good. It is not good. Na sadhu manye. Yata atmanoyam. Because the atma, asamna pikleshada asudeha. Asudeha means this body. One will again have to take asan api kleshada asudeha. This temporary body, asan, it is asat. It is not permanent. This temporary body is called klesha da, the giver of klesh. What is klesh? Sufferings. That's what this body is. Klesha da. So, this verse, Lord Rishabdev is telling his son, who was Bharat, he was becoming the next emperor after Lord Rishabdev. And he instructed his 100 sons. So, and they were given birth by Lord Rishabdev, so they're very exalted. All of those 100 sons were very exalted. And Bharata was no exception. The whole planet is named after him, Bharatavarsha. So he was a very great personality. But this story is there in the Srimad Bhagavatam to teach us even a small mistake. Just like if you're shaving with a razor, especially a straight razor, one little mistake, you get cut. So one has to be very careful, very diligent. This is required. If one wants to make spiritual advancement in a serious way and not have to hang around for another 100 lifetimes in this material world, then you have to train your mind, your senses to remember Krishna, to become attached to Krishna, to become attached to Guru and Vaishnavas, to become attached to the activities of bhakti and so forth. And then if you do that, you'll automatically see and very quickly recognize that all of these are so insignificant and useless. Useless. But people nowadays who don't have transcendental knowledge, they take shelter of keeping pets and animals because it's such a horrible situation in the modern society where people are just so alone and so much isolated. So they keep a pet, like a dog or a cat, for friendship, for some comradeship. They're not to be blamed for that. However, it's a sad situation because that's their karma, you see. But someone who is so fortunate that they receive transcendental schooling and knowledge from the Shastras, so they have to cultivate that attachment for Krishna. Doesn't mean that we don't care about other living entities. No, of course we do. We care. We have some affection for them. But no attachment. This is what Srila Gurudev told. So you should be affectionate actually to all. Why? Because all living entities, they're like you. They're like us. They're jivas, just like us. They've been in the material world suffering. Everyone is facing their karma. Just like yesterday on the lawn, the subject matter was brought up not by me, but by all the devotees about the vaccination and this and that, and everybody's talking about, well, it's their karma. If they're going to do this, their karma, they're going to suffer, they're going to die, this, that. But yeah, that's the actual fact. Everybody is facing their karma. Everyone is facing their karma. But it doesn't mean that we are callous towards the living beings. No, we feel sympathy for them. Look at Vasudeva Datta. He was feeling sympathy for every living entity. He wanted to actually sacrifice himself to take all the sinful reactions of all the living entities in the universe so that they can be freed and he will suffer. Imagine such personality. People glorify Lord Jesus Christ for suffering for other sins. Prabhupada told this. He says, but a personality like Vasudeva Datta, because Jesus Christ, he told, if you follow me, then I will relieve you of your sins. But Vasudeva Datta didn't even have that. He just, I cannot tolerate to see them suffering. This is the nature of a Vaishnava. But a Vaishnava is also not sentimental. Sentimental means no knowledge, just sentiment. And Prabhupada told that religion without philosophy is sentimentalism. And philosophy without religion is mental speculation. So you have to have both. You have to have knowledge and you have to follow a process of devotional service to the Supreme Lord. So the story of King Bharat is there in the Srimad Bhagavatam to show us and everyone that even if you're such an exalted person, you should never neglect your practices. That's how he fell into this. And he became sentimentally, emotionally attached to an animal. Okay? And that animal didn't care anything about him because he's a dumb animal. He just left and went with the other deer. But he was foolish. He made such a foolish mistake. So then what happened? He took birth in a deer body in the forest. What did he do in that deer body? Do you know?
He had the same human consciousness of when
Well, he had memory of it. Not the same human consciousness, but he had memory that he had done that. And then what? What did he do in that deer body?
Well, I'm not sure.
Okay. Yeah.
Only go to the temple, hearing the Katha.
Yes. Prasadam. There are sadhus in the forest, and they are speaking, and he's nearby, and he's hearing, and he's taking their prasadam. Yes. And then when he left that deer body, after that period of imprisonment, how did he take birth in the third life?
Went back to Godhead.
No. He had to take another birth as a human being. What kind of family did he take birth in?
They were Brahmins.
Brahmin family.
Landowners.
Yes, they were well-to-do Brahmin family.
But his brothers called him Jad Bharat.
No. First of all, you have to explain what did he realize from the beginning of his life. He remembered. Krishna let him remember that I used to be the king. And then I made a very, very serious mistake. Then I had to delay and spend a whole life as a deer, which is probably, 15 years or 20 years, something like that. Now, in his next human birth, in a Brahmin family, elevated birth, he understood, I will not make this same mistake again. And actually, he was extremely realized right from his early childhood. He understood that I should not become attached at all. At all. Very, very careful. So he voluntarily and intentionally acted as if he was dumb and like he couldn't speak much and he couldn't really hear and understand, like a dullard. He acted like that. So it was frustrating for his father. Gurudev describes, father is trying to teach him. Bhagavatam also is telling. But he intentionally was doing the opposite of what he was taught. And eventually they just gave up. What can we do? And the brothers were actually cruel to him. And they made fun of him and all of that. But he was so perfectly realized, he just tolerated everything. And he continued like this because he had a mission. His mission is, this is it. This is the last life. I'm attaining spiritual perfection now. So he was deeply absorbed in Krishna day and night, day and night. Outwardly, he was not showing this. But internally, he was completely absorbed in Krishna. So, they couldn't give him much to do because he was acting as if he didn't know anything. So they thought, okay, we'll keep him out in the field at night. In the middle of the night, animals, birds, they'll come and they'll try to eat the crops. So we'll keep him out there like a human scarecrow so that he will keep away all the animals. Jad Bharat loved this engagement because now he didn't have to deal with anyone and he was alone and he was chanting and everything, right? And after doing this for some time, one day, there was a group of very evil men. They were also worshippers of Kali, because many demoniac persons, they worship goddess Kali. These men, they wanted to do a human sacrifice to the goddess Kali. And you know what they were looking and searching for? They were looking for a person called a man-animal, who was in a human body but almost like an animal. When they saw Jad Bharat sitting there at night, they came and they saw, oh, look at him. Look, yes, he looks like the person. So they came up to him to grab him, and they found that he was not giving any struggle, because Jad Bharat perfectly knew that the Supreme Lord is protecting me. Whatever he wants to happen, this was what will happen, and he was accepting. So they just led him away like an animal. And they brought him some miles distant. And they brought him into a Kali, goddess Kali temple, Durga. There was a big deity of the goddess Kali. With so many arms. So now they bathed him, get him ready for the blood sacrifice. And he agreed with everything. They tied his hands. And then they brought him to the altar and they began chanting different mantras in front of the deity. And the priest was chanting different mantras. And he held up his sword, which was going to be lowered onto the neck of Jad Bharat and slice off his head. Very heavy, heavy, axe-like sword. And just at the moment when he was going to lower the sword, do you know what happened? Have you ever heard? Oh my God, you got to study Srimad Bhagavatam. This is the most exciting stories in the world. So just at that moment, Goddess Kali, who is watching, burst out of the deity. You can see a beautiful painting, very beautiful, with blood going everywhere. Goddess Kali and her she-demon associates burst out of the deity. She grabbed the sword from the hand of that priest and sliced off his head. Then she sliced off the heads of all the others, and all the she-demons, they also came and started drinking the blood from the necks of those sliced off heads. And then Jad Bharat was saved by Kali herself, who is the expansion of Krishna's internal potency. She could never tolerate to see a pure devotee being murdered in such a ghastly way. So after that, the Bhagavatam just relates that now Jadbharata began to wander everywhere. Yes. And in that beautiful chapters, those beautiful chapters of the Bhagavatam, Jadbharata meets a king. And it so happens that he meets this king because the king was traveling and being carried by 4 men on a palanquin. That's how kings used to travel in their kingdom. And when one man would become too much tired to carry, then they would just bring someone who looked strong, one of the other citizens, from the side of the road, and then they would assign them, you should now carry. So when they saw Jadbharata, because Jadbharata actually, he was very strong, youthful, very beautiful also. But he outwardly pretended to look like a dullard. So they saw, oh, he's very strong, bring him, bring him. So they said, now you come, you carry. So the one person who was tired, he was relieved, and then Jadbharata began to carry. So as the palanquin was being moved along, it was like the king was getting shaken, and it was very uncomfortable. And then he began to yell at what are you doing? Why are you carrying like this? And then all the other 3 men, they said, it's not us, oh dear king, it's this new one that you brought. You know, he's carrying it in an awkward way and it's causing it to shake. So then the king looked at him and he said, you understand? I am the king. I can punish you. You now should carry this properly. So then, again, they began. They go a few steps and again, shaking, shaking, shaking. Why was it shaking? Do you know why the palanquin was shaking?
Yes.
Why?
Because see the ants.
Yes.
He
Don't step on them.
Yeah.
Yes. He was seeing the ants, and so therefore he was stepping in a strange way. And that's why the whole thing. So then the king, he had them put this palanquin, then he began to chastise Jadbharata. And a conversation ensued. We don't have time to get into that, but it's a very, very interesting conversation. And eventually, all of a sudden, the king realizes, because he's talking with Jadbharata, and Jadbharata is telling him transcendental knowledge of the soul and everything. And then the king suddenly bows down to him and says, you are somehow hidden from everyone's view, but you are a great personality. So please, I beg for forgiveness. I've committed offenses against you. And then he asked him, who are you? Who are you? And Jadbharata said, you know, in your family, there was one ancestor named King Bharat. He said, yes, yes, I know very well. I am that king in my previous life. So then there was a whole conversation. It is so wonderful how transcendental knowledge was conveyed to the king. King's name was Rahugana, and that king became a great devotee and fully surrendered to Jadbharata. So from this we understand from Srimad Bhagavatam, don't make a mistake. This human life is short and we can die at any time. We must always be fixed in Krishna. That's what he tells in the Bhagavad Gita. Therefore, always think of me. Always have me in your mind. This is Krishna consciousness. So in that way, this Chaitanya Charitamrita with purport is being discussed, that one must be initiated by a bona fide spiritual master, and if one is not, his devotional activities are useless. It means that he cannot progress. And a person who is not properly initiated can again descend into the animal species. It's possible. It's possible. It's also possible even if someone is initiated, but they perform many, many sinful activities. Oh, they'll have to suffer. They will have to suffer. It's an illusion of Maya to think, oh, my life is very good. I can take intoxication. I can do what I want. And I won't get any reaction because I'm a devotee and I'm chanting. And this is that's a big illusion. You will be punished. So, yes, it is the duty of every human being to surrender to a bona fide spiritual master, giving him everything, body, mind, and intelligence, one must take Vaishnava initiation from him. So we'll continue tomorrow, these few verses that we read today, and it will clarify more and more. Gaur Pranam. Vanchakalpatarubhyascha kripasinubhya eva cha patitanam pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo namo